don't know that. I don't know that. don't know that. I don't know that. I don't know. one of those shops at 2nd Street and Broadway. It's completely looted there, taken over by those people who smashed those windows open. We saw some people doing that with rocks, bricks, other items, even using their own feet to kick in that glass, shattering it, and then running in, grabbing sweatshirts, hats, backpacks, just anything that you can imagine, just absolutely cleaning out these stores. And safety issues, we are not down there, but our network crew grabbing a lot of that video, counting about 30 stores that have been completely cleaned out around the promenade area, around 4th Street and Santa Monica Boulevard as well. We watched that REI that was just completely demolished with those rioters there going in, smashing the windows, and again, taking all of this property and really taking advantage of this situation where you have the peaceful protesters that have gone off to the other side. They went down to the screen with these grab backpacks, hats, shoes, running in there, even grabbing bikes. And a lot of the people who were trying to step in. And keep in mind, a lot of these business owners that have been having to close for months now because of COVID-19, now trying to reopen and then dealing with this, some of them maybe not able to come back after this kind of situation. And we saw some of those people who live in that area, maybe work in this area, trying to protect those stores. It could also be some of the peaceful protesters that are saying, hey, this is not what this demonstration is about. They don't want to put a bad name to this. They don't want to have all of this violence and looting happening kind of around in this protest area with those people taking advantage of it. We've seen some of those people blocking those areas, trying to help and getting pushed right out of the way. Some of them physically assaulted by some of those looters who have nothing on their mind really except to just clean out these stores that you're watching here. So it's been really tough to see this video again and keeping an eye on all of it. But again, that breaking news that we brought you right at the top, I just want to reiterate again, a police officer in Santa Monica shot in the foot between the areas of Venice and Santa Monica. We're working to get more information for you on that. When we do, we'll be back there with another update. We'll send it back to you.
Thank you, and we will stay on top of that, and we'll come back to you as soon as you get some new information. And as we continue to see these images on your screen, we can't reiterate enough, this is not what we wish we were showing you. We wish we could focus on the peaceful protest that we saw all day. Instead, that overshadowed by the looting and the ransacking of these stores, the breaking in that continues at this hour. A live look right now from our news shopper for Bravo. Let's get up to Gil Labus. Gil, if you're with us, about what you're seeing here and exactly where this is happening.
Well, Jonathan, this is east up Broadway. This is Broadway and 9th Street. You're seeing one of these stores here. I'm trying to make out the name of it. We're going to try to move closer to it to get it, but I believe it says it's maybe a pharmacy that people have just broken into and are continuing to loot. They're going in and out. We're noticed that, you know, we're looking for the areas where there's a lot of cars. We'll see the cars pulling up here, and that tips us off for any area that's being looted. And sure enough, they're doing the same routine, pulling up to the curbside, dropping off people, and they come back out like this person is doing right now with goods, and then taking them right to the cars and getting in the back seat. So that's what we're seeing here. I believe it's a pharmacy. I'll have to get more comfort.
It is called Tritech Pharmaceuticals, at least according to Google Maps, and that's what you're seeing people breaking into. And of course, this is a good distance from 4th Street, where we've been seeing the primary looting today, Gil. Police, I'm assuming, not in this area yet.
They're not at all. They're dealing with the smaller group down Broadway towards the beach, and you're seeing more and more people filtering out of that pharmacy right now. People coming out with a lot of product and departing. We're going to slide right, Jim, to get a little closer to the scene. But you see more and more people coming across the street, parking in different areas, and running into the store. The windows, it looks like the front door has already been shattered. I'll come in a little closer. You can see the glass on the ground there. Very typical of what we've been seeing yesterday and today as well.
And what's so typical, we've been seeing for a few days, is that method of operation where they use cars and they can move around quickly. They use the car, they drive right up like they're picking up goods, go in, grab stuff, throw it in the car maybe a couple times, and then drive off. And then earlier today, Gil, we saw cars with their license plates covered so that police could not get their license plate. And we saw someone who was actually ripping that off. He got assaulted by someone for trying to do an act of good, trying to take that cover off.
Yeah, that was very dramatic. We were worried about that bicyclist as he pulled that cloth off the rear license plate of that vehicle, and the suspect's inside the car, jumping out and trying to beat the guy on the bicycle. He was able to get away and break free, fortunately, but time after time we're seeing more of this happening with the cars pulling up, and that is a good indication for us up in the air. We can spot that pretty easy. We look for those cars. Now look at, there's a couple of guys running off here, and it's probably because there's law enforcement on their way.
And Gil, as we say with your shot, we want to let our viewers know that on the right side of your screen there's some ground video, looks like cell phone video, of the sake house there in Santa Monica near 3rd Street Promenade on fire at one point today. It's unclear, because this is not a live shot, about what the status is of that place, but set fire, we're assuming, by the people who've been breaking into these stores, and it's just an unfortunate situation, Kathy, as we've been seeing firefighters also having trouble getting into these areas because their own safety is at risk, and there's not enough, law enforcement support to help them put out all of these spot fires that we keep seeing.
Yeah, in certain situations, they might need protection. They might need police to go in first and clear the way. I don't know how blocked the streets are there, but yeah, we saw that one fire. And we also saw that car that was torched, that vehicle earlier, just go up in flames. So we've seen a couple of fires here and there. Nothing like we saw last night, and hopefully it won't happen, but we're 15 minutes away from the county-wide curfew going into effect, and yet we're still seeing these businesses here that you see right here on the left-hand side of your screen being looted. A couple of them there, Jonathan and Gil, where we saw cars driving up and people coming out and taking what they could.
It amazes me how many people continue to pour out of this pharmacy, though, or what we believe to be a pharmacy here. It is just incredible, because this is several blocks, I believe about 5 blocks from where most of the police activity that we've seen are trying to stop looters along 4th Street. This is along 9th Court and Broadway, and they're nowhere near this scene. And as you mentioned, there you go, Kathy, they coordinate this, they come in cars, they kind of time it, and then they drive away, and we see one person here who appears to maybe be a civilian, someone who's just on the street, standing there, just kind of watching everything unfold, wondering what's going on. But again, you see how widespread this is now. It makes it unbelievably difficult, if not nearly impossible, for police to patrol every single block here. Yeah,
we heard from Sheriff Villanueva that is why they wanted this curfew in effect county-wide, because, they're dealing with hotspots all over the place, and they're getting, intel and hearing on social media about gatherings happening. And so every time we've seen a gathering, unfortunately, even if it has the best intentions and it's peaceful, you have these other groups that hear about it too, and then they show up and they take this opportunity to go in and to break into the stores and to loot, and are really quite good and systematic at it. As we said, they're now using cars and they can get away quickly, and we really haven't seen many people actively being arrested as a result of this.
No, we really haven't, and it's because police have been stretched so thin. On one hand, they've been monitoring the protests, the peaceful protests that have been happening, and asking them to disperse. On the other hand, they've been trying to keep the 3rd Street Promenade protected. They've been trying to keep the mall protected, and here it is, a Goodwill just a few blocks away from the mall here on 6th and Santa Monica, a very popular Goodwill, I can attest. There's actually some actual high-end items in this Goodwill that they keep kind of separate, and the front end's completely shattered. People are walking out with boxes of stuff, and it's just absolute lawlessness happening right now.
All right, we're going to check in with NBC4's Darsha Phillips. She has been out today monitoring the situation and looking at what's going on around the county. Darsha, where are you?
Well, Kathy, we are staying away from the protests because of the safety issue, but we are seeing a lot of tough images coming out from some of those areas where those demonstrations have dissolved into civil unrest. Now, I do want to mention the majority of these protests have remained peaceful. It is a few of these bad actors, if you will, that have caused some civil unrest and civil disobedience. We do want to show you some video from the ground, from cell phone footage. This is video that shows an Amazon truck being taken over and looted. You also see a woman being thrown down to the ground. It's not clear if that woman is the driver of that Amazon truck. We have not been able to confirm that just yet. And you see several people begin to steal packages out of the back of that van. Just unbelievable video video of a very dangerous situation in parts of Santa Monica that is continuing right now. Now, we are not reporting again from the ground because of these safety reasons. We have reached out to several people who have been in the middle of all of this that have shot video on their cell phones. Here's a look at some of that video as it continues. Cameras were rolling as a fight appears to break out among people demonstrating in Santa Monica. Other footage shows people running through the streets, damaging fences and property. And video shot by a civilian shows the Van store in Santa Monica being vandalized and looted. Again, this does not represent the majority of protesters. I did speak with a peaceful protester who was out there earlier. She says she tried to stop several people from tagging businesses.
We're fighting for a man who lost his life in the streets. This was not their opportunity to mess this up and blame it on us. And I knew that if the news was to get that footage of just the graffiti, I knew the face that they were going to put on that. And it was going to be a face that looked like mine. And the truth was, that was not the case. So I had to say something.
Now, this is video of Nia Duckett confronting those people tagging the Starbucks. She believes they were agitators and not part of the larger peaceful demonstrations. Duckett is part of Black Lives Matter and says that their message is one of peaceful resistance. She does not condone this violence. However, she says she does understand the anger and frustration felt by so many Black people right now. And Kathy, Jonathan, I do want to say one thing that struck a chord is that she said that progress is the only way that we are going to eradicate these images that we're seeing on our television screens right now. We have to fight for social justice, and we have to fight for progress. We'll send it back to you guys.
On social media earlier today, it was very powerful. She was asking those women not to paint them, Black Lives Matter, in a dark light. All right, as we continue right now, we want to go to Rick Montanez. We know, Rick, that 1,000 National Guardsmen and women are now assigned to cover Los Angeles County, 500 of them working in the city of LA alone. We know you have a little bit more on that. Rick, what can you tell us?
Yeah, and Jonathan, we heard from Sheriff Alex Villanueva talk about the 500 National Guard troops that are here for Los Angeles County. He made that request yesterday. Today we heard from LA Mayor Eric Garcetti talking about the 500 National Guard troops that he requested for the city of Los Angeles. Right now, what they're doing is we've seen video from them being deployed to the steps of City Hall, but LA Mayor Eric Garcetti and LA Police Chief Michael Moore say that these troops will be deployed to a lot of areas that are unsecure. They want to focus on trying to get officers back on the street to try and restore peace. A response the city of Los Angeles has not seen in years. 500 troops from the National Guard activated to Southern California, called upon for the civil unrest that is bringing demonstrations, protests, and vandalism reminiscent of the early 1990s.
And it's a heavy decision. Military uniform.
LA Mayor Eric Garcetti and Police Chief Michael Moore today from City Hall saying they called the Guard in while the LAPD is on full department call-out.
We mobilized
California business late last night following hours of unrest. What started as peaceful protests turned into a night filled with destruction, vandalism, and looting.
We feel a righteous rage, and we have to express it. But the rage must not consume us.
Garcetti and Moore say there will be conversations with community, faith, and civil rights leaders and activists. Conversations that are certainly not new to the city.
Los Angeles has incredible successes, and like any city in America, we still have a long way to go. But those commitments, especially now, must be accelerated. We can't do that while there's burning in the street. So let's bring that peace back and simultaneously talk about the progress forward.
Peace, he hopes, the National Guard can help secure. Of course, Mayor Garcetti and Chief Moore will have to adjust these deployments as the situation unfolds across the city. And then, of course, the sheriff will have to adjust as the situation unfolds across the county. We're seeing a lot of troops out at City Hall. And again, the sheriff saying that troops were sent out to Santa Monica to help. As for how long they will be deployed here in Southern California, that still remains to be seen. I'm Rick Montanez. We'll go back to you.
Rick, thank you. We want to get up to Gil Labus, the news chopper for Bravo again. Gil, we saw smoke, we see protest.
The LA County Sheriff's involved in there as well. As I come out to a wider shot, you'll see at the corner of 5th and protesters came up with fire extinguishers and put out the bullets, and some of these other people just...
Okay, and certainly no one going home, even though that curfew is in effect, and we're getting ready in just a few minutes for the LA County curfew to go into effect. That one 6 tonight until 6 tomorrow morning, but we're still seeing awful lot of people there on the street.
This is as close as we've seen them to protesters today, Kathy.
Yeah, they're right up in there, and you know, a lot more happening too with the fires that are being set. And definitely not what the city wanted to see today after that protest all day long was so peaceful. And we only saw, you know, just that one bad situation with the looting that was happening at the stores. But now we're seeing the officers on the move.
This feels reminiscent of what we were seeing yesterday at the Fairfax District, where we saw, you know, some protesters right up against the skirmish line there with law enforcement, though we're seeing a lot more law enforcement, as we just saw, run into this area. We also want to know earlier when we talk about those peaceful protests, this is significantly smaller as we see officers now running down the street, and it's unclear where they're headed.
Yeah, now they're stopping a little bit. They ran for a minute, now they're back on the run, so you know, we want to see what they're doing, where they're going, where they are focusing their attention right now, as you know, certain groups here have chosen not to go home. Okay, so they are lining up right now. We'll see what they're going to do. We've where people are
find them again. This curfew in the city is saying making arrests. We right now, but you wonder what their strategy is if they're now trying to kind of corral people.
Arrest, the LAPD say they arrested nearly 400 people last night after businesses were vandalized, looted, and burned in the Fairfax District. And NBC4's I-Team has been gathering new information about who was locked up in recent days. And we have investigative reporter Eric Leonard with us once again with more information on that. Eric.
Well, Kathy, local police agencies say they're still compiling all of the arrest information from the last 24 hours. So what we have right now is really an initial snapshot. And across LA, PD data obtained by the I-Team shows this chaos along Fairfax, Melrose, and Beverly led to at least 398 people being detained, then cited or booked. The allegation is long after the planned demonstration in Pan Pacific Park ended, Saturday night's criminal behavior escalated.
That transition to vehicles, caravans, individuals that were moving from location to location in an effort to loot those businesses.
On Friday night, the LAPD said 533 people were either cited or arrested after vandalism and looting in downtown LA, including at least 18 who were jailed on more serious allegations. The I-Team has obtained a list that shows all of those held on felony violations listed Southern California addresses, including 14 who said they were from the city of LA, 2 from Glendale, and others from El Monte, Baldwin Park, Covina, and Gardena. Most were arrested on suspicion of looting or burglary, and of those, LAPD jail records listed their ethnicities as 13 Hispanic, 7 black, and 3 white. About half were released from jail without posting bail. Several of the others remain in custody, some because of warrants. Now, it will take another day or so to compile a complete list of those who were given citations and released, and the others who've been held in jail. And of course, the I-Team will bring you that information as soon as we get it. Reporting live, I'm investigative reporter Eric Leonard, NBC4 News. Back to you.
Eric, thank you for that report. We want to go back to News Chopper 4 Bravo.
Do you want the mic
over this
too?
Monica with Gil Labus overhead. And Gil, in the last few minutes, we saw police enter this area. We were wondering if they were going to either...
Hispanic, 7 black, and 3 white. About half were released from jail without posting bail. Several of the others remain in custody, some because of warrants.
I'm sorry about that. I'm having some issues with my IFB, but we're looking at 5th Street and Broadway. That group has moved into the intersection as the police force has pushed them into that intersection. The fire has mostly is out at this point, but the 3 sections of the street here have the skirmish line set up by the police department. You see protesters there in the street, but right now that fire, it seems to be out. The trash pile continues to grow, but they've deployed more units here to this area and trying to push the people up towards the east, up along Broadway here. That's 5th and Broadway again, and some of the crowd did disperse and ran up Broadway, but a lot of them stayed here in the intersection, and at some point you see, well, actually you're seeing it now, the field force pushing through the fire zone area. They're actually walking right through it and putting the fire out, whatever's left of it, as it smolders there. But they're trying to push the crowd back towards the east, up Broadway. And you know, I was just, as I was watching this group, I was taking a look out the window at that pharmacy that was being looted just a short time ago, and I did notice several police officers making an attempt to arrest some of the people there just a couple of blocks from here, a couple blocks east, to push.
Protests have been peaceful, but for the
surrounding that particular couple of people, they're right at the corner there at 5th and Broadway, trying to move them back. It looks like that person is not complying and will possibly be arrested because of that. We're just trying to get the people to continue to move out east away from the promenade area right now and continue eastbound at Broadway.
It is now 6 o'clock, and you are watching our continuous coverage of the protests and unrest after the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis.
Curfew is now in effect for all of LA County, including all of the cities here. Let's go out to Gil Levis in News Chopper 4. Bravo, you're over Santa Monica right now. Looks like they're trying to move people out of the area here, Gil.
That's right, Colleen. This is 5th and Broadway. They're making a push. That is the police department making a push up eastbound on Broadway from 5th Street. They were able to clear the intersection where there was a bonfire set right there in the center. They have that fire completely out now, but you see the huge mobile force here that's moving. You got a couple of other people on the corner over here that are, well, I'm not sure if they're being detained or if they're just standing there. It looks like they're just standing there right for now. But the bulk of the group here, as I come out to a wider shot, you'll see the line of officers there right at the intersection. More officers coming in behind them, and they continue to make that slow push from 4th Street, where that Vans store was being looted earlier, here on Broadway up to 5th so far. It's a slow process. There is at times some pushing and shoving in the lines there. You see the protesters right there in the face of the police right in their face, and they're just trying to get that crowd to continue to move eastbound on Broadway.
Seems the crowd holding their line right now, though a lot smaller of a crowd than the protests that we've seen today. And this is very close, right, Gil, to the areas that we've seen looted in your 4th and Broadway, right?
Yeah, that's correct, Jonathan. That's where that Vans shoe store and several other businesses in this area, including the Santa Monica Place Mall that was being hit several times in the course of the early afternoon. We arrived on scene to see that happen twice. The police moved in there in 2 different times and had to chase out the looters that were taking items from those stores, from Bloomingdale's and Nordstrom's and the other stores inside that shopping center. But for now, I can tell you that the 3rd Street Promenade is secured, and we didn't see any type of looting on that particular stretch of shops. In the surrounding areas, we did see quite a bit happening throughout the day.
And a curfew has been in effect in the city of Santa Monica since 4 p.m., so anybody outside right now is considered to be unlawful. They did declare the protest earlier an unlawful assembly as well when that curfew took effect. As we see some of them now dispersing, it's unclear if things are being thrown back and forth. And as we are now in the 6 o'clock hour, we can remind our viewers or inform our viewers that a curfew is now in effect for the entire LA County. Every city in LA County, more than the 10 million people who live here, are now under a curfew from 6 p.m. that will expire tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Colleen?
You know, Jonathan, I'm glad there was some clarification on that, because all afternoon we heard that the curfew for Santa Monica went into effect at 4 o'clock. And now we see there are protesters still out there, but the county-wide curfew typically supersedes all of that. Gil, has this really been a 2-hour process of trying to move people out of the area?
It really has. It started down on Ocean Avenue and has moved into the city here, into the shops up Broadway in particular here, and still holding the line at 5th and Broadway. But we did see just moments ago items being tossed by groups back here in the crowd at the officers. Some of the officers getting struck by those items and not sure what was being thrown. And that caused the group there to kind of disperse a little bit. But officers using a lot of patience here with the crowd as they get pelted at times with items. We haven't seen a lot of that here, just mostly just a little pushing and shoving happening, and the crowd eventually giving way. Of course, that fire there in the intersection there is out, and they were at just about 10 minutes ago all in that intersection. They had it taken over, but the police have retaken that intersection and continuing to try to slowly push them up Broadway eastbound.
And we can't...
Is this the bulk of where the protesters are right now? Are there any other large splinter groups in that area?
You know, we've been looking out the window as we've been covering this and trying to see if there's any other groups. There was quite a few people up here during the peaceful protest. I'm not sure where they moved on to, but we did find this group here. It looks like the biggest group in the area so far.
And while we mentioned that this was close to where the looting was happening, we can't stress enough that the people who are on your screen right now are peacefully protesting, despite this protest being unlawful. These are not the same people who were out looting the stores just a block or so away from where this is happening right now. And this, by far, Colleen, the closest kind of standoff that we've seen between protesters and police. It has been civil for the most part most of the afternoon. It has been very peaceful, but now we're seeing you know, this kind of this tense standoff happening here, you know, and then you see that vehicle being brought in almost to intimidate the protesters in some respect. But they have been told many times now to disperse, to go home, that since 4 o'clock their assembly has been considered unlawful.
You know, Gil, you are privy to some of the chatter from the chopper up there between the agencies. What are they saying? Is there someone on a bullhorn trying to push them back right now? There seems to be some movement at the back of the line. How long do they move people out?
Until they see a mobile field force that comes into play, like you see right there in the center of your screen. As that group approached right there, the entire protest line starts to melt back and melt away. People start backing up, and as you see there, slowly but surely they're stepping backwards as the officers slowly move forward. So that task force there moving in, it sends a big message to the crowd that, hey, we are serious. We are going to continue. Protesters are going to start making their way slowly up Broadway from 5th.
Be switched. On the left side of your screen, I believe, is Long Beach. We have News Chopper 4 Alpha overseeing clearly some looting happening. It looks like this is a hot topic. Eliana, you with us?
Jonathan, yeah, we are. We're, as you mentioned, this is going to be the hot topic. It's part of the Pike Outlet Mall here, just off of Shoreline Drive in Long Beach, where you can see that some looters have, in fact, entered the store, broken the glass, taking handfuls, literally handfuls, and running away from the scene. And as we continue to watch these individuals make their way into the store, we see that more people are approaching. And I'll show you where a lot of these people are coming from. There was a group of protesters that we were monitoring for quite a while here through the streets of Long Beach, and they were very peaceful. Everyone was kind of just staying either on the street or moving in one big group in the middle of this street, and you can see some of these individuals here. These are not the looters. These are, in fact, legitimate protesters who are out here seeking justice. But unfortunately, some looters got into the mix and unfortunately took advantage of that opportunity to loot some of the stores here in the area. And let me just give you a little backstory. There was a situation earlier today at the Nike store, which is only a few storefronts away, where some of the protesters blocked the entrance to the store to prevent the looters from coming in. They were asking them to please not loot, to please not affect their cause, and they were actually pretty successful. They were able to keep people away from the Nike store, but unfortunately those looters just moved on to other stores. We also heard that the Forever 21 was affected, and now we see that the hot topic is currently their target.
And they're very close to the downtown area if they're right there at Shoreline. Where's the closest police presence, Ileana?
Let's widen out the shot, Colleen, and I'll see if I can find them. I did find some units throughout the city. I know that there's a number of units protecting the police station, but immediately right here on Shoreline Drive, I'm actually not seeing any officers at all. I had seen one of the SWAT Bearcats here in the area, but that was several minutes ago. I'm really not seeing anyone immediately here at the Pike outlets.
You know, as we stay with your shot here, Eliana, we're seeing a lot of people suddenly running. Are you seeing any police activity now? It's unclear what's making them run.
Yeah, let me widen out, and there we go. Yep, sure enough, there are some officers right there. That's the reason that those people started running away. These officers are just off of Bay Street, which is just north of Shoreline Drive. So they're still focusing their attention there on those protesters who are there. But unfortunately, all of the looting is over here, and now they're scattering because the officers must be approaching. They must be. Why else would they run like that? They have to be coming at them right now. But I'm actually not seeing any, so they got spooked for whatever reason coming out of the Hot Topic store, but still with their hands full, getting whatever they can and running away.
We want to emphasize this curfew is in effect for all of LA County, so that would definitely include the Long Beach area. Ileana, they have their own PD. So what are they doing now? They're pushing them towards, I'm trying to get my bearings here. You said they're on Bay Street. That's where the Pike Mall is, just off Shoreline. So is that headed towards the aquarium there?
Yeah, so the Pike Mall is actually just north of it all of those famous landmarks here in the Long Beach area, which you're seeing there. We're not far from the Queen Mary. So the Outlet Mall is just a little bit north of that, just off of Shoreline Drive. But people are really scattering in all directions. We see a lot of people, though, heading to the north. So this street that they're on now is going to be Pine Avenue, coming away from Seaside Way. So it looks like most people are just walking away. I don't know if this is a mix of protesters and looters, but there was a very large group of protesters, numbering as much as 1,000 that were out here on the streets of Long Beach for most of the day, and it was pretty peaceful except for a few incidents of looting. And unfortunately, now is when we see that some people have found their opportunity here, a chance to go into some of these local shops and take whatever they can.
Yeah, it's stealing the message of the protesters just a couple blocks away. Eliana, thank you for that. We'll come back to you shortly. On the right side of your screen, we want to focus on what Gil Labus is looking at. It looks like a sheriff's vehicle on fire. Gil, what can you tell us?
Jonathan, this is at 4th and Civic Center in Santa Monica. My pilot, Jim Pollard, spotted this heavy smoke coming out of this area. We moved over here to find these two vehicles vandalized. It looks like the number 480 there, it looks like that has been vandalized there with the rear window blown out and the door open. But this one's set on fire, fully ablaze, and it's going to be a complete loss there. No sign of the fire department yet. As you see there, actually behind that tree, there was one police unit there you can't see right now. But right next to a construction zone, some commercial structures here that are being built, and it's likely going to catch that, at least the fence on fire, but there is one building there that could also catch fire. We're hoping that the fire department can get in here real soon and knock this down. Generally speaking, they are able to knock down car fires pretty quickly, but it is a sheriff's vehicle that is on fire, and as I say that there's a vehicle rolling by there, I thought maybe that was the fire department, but no, they're still not here at the scene, but putting up a lot of smoke in this area, pretty visible from all around. Very thick, dark smoke that's going up here 4th and Civic Center Drive.
And there's one directly behind it. Looks like it was vandalized as well, windows broken. We know at least a dozen were vandalized and torched between Friday and Saturday. Gil, you had one earlier. Do we have any kind of tally on the kind of damage to law enforcement vehicles so far today?
You know, I haven't actually officially heard a count, but this is the first one we've seen that is actually being burned and on fire. There was another vehicle close to this area that might have been another sheriff's vehicle. It kind of looks similar to this, that when we arrived on scene was fully gutted and burned out. The fire department was getting on scene when we were over that, and that was put out. But at this point, at least 2 vehicles in Santa Monica that we've seen, and this one is the very latest, one of 2 that we've seen on fire here in the Santa Monica area.
And Gil, as we look at your shot here, and again, no firefighters in this area, the problem right now in the city of Santa Monica is that police are already stretched thin, and they kind of need a police escort right now, considering what's going on with all the looting and the violent acts, to even get into this scene, and that's not something that can be provided easily.
That's correct. I've been looking at the scene where the fire department is, and wherever you see the fire department vehicles, there too are the police escorting them. So you're right, Jonathan. It's a very difficult task for them to get into all these spots. They wait for a report of fire, or if they see a loom up like this of very dark smoke, they will respond to that area to try to put it out. But again, it takes a while because they have to be escorted wherever they go.
Let's talk a little bit about the National Guard. We saw them in the Mid-City area earlier today. We've seen them on the steps of City Hall. Is there any talk on the scanners at all that they would be coming in with the fire department in Santa Monica?
You know, I haven't heard that yet, although there's been rumors that they're going to be deployed to this area. We did see them we were actually over it when they were briefing at the Wilshire Department of LAPD in their parking lot. We saw quite a few Humvees. Then we went over to the LA Convention Center, where it looks like that's the hub of the National Guard dispatch or staging area. And then at City Hall, of course, we saw the dispatch there on the steps of City Hall with the LAPD officers.
And as we heard from the sheriff yesterday, they have two primary missions here, if you will. One is to handle traffic, sort of blocking traffic if they have to shut down areas. And the other one would be protection. So they'll be protecting buildings, i.e. when we saw them lined up on the steps of City Hall into an area, some of the looters, they may be able to get there ahead of them.
Yeah, that's correct. We're waiting to see if we see any vehicles moving this way on the 10 freeway. So far, we have not seen any National Guard vehicles coming into this area.
It's striking to see these two images of a police vehicle on fire, and to see the National Guard at the Convention Center. We want to bring in our own Conan Nolan. Conan, we've made references today. We've heard references. You've talked about it. 1965, Watts riots. 1992. Here we are yet again, and these images don't seem very different from what we saw and what LA saw then.
True, although I must say it was a much different response from law enforcement. They have done everything they possibly can to not overreact, obviously. I have to tell you, we have talked about the peaceful protesters and the looters. There's a third group, though, having covered skirmish lines in the past. And that is a group that is not looting, although they see looting as part of the protest, as a financial protest against the establishment. And they also don't believe it's really a protest unless there is a physical confrontation with law enforcement. And they are some of the individuals who do not disperse. And if you had a microphone at the skirmish line, you'd be astonished as to just how much goading there is. There is an effort to get police along that skirmish line to overreact. And so it's a delicate balance on the part of police departments. And remember, these are very different departments from the Watts riots and the Rodney King riots of yesteryear. They will come under criticism from the other side. I might point that out as well, that there's a little too much understanding and not enough outrage, and that the idea that you had officers, this will be the complaint, I guarantee you, in Santa Monica with monitoring the peaceful protest while no one being around where the looting was taking place, that there's the visual aspect of this where people will think that they have yielded the stores to the looters, that is not a priority, and that could backfire because the more you tend to do that, would say the critics, the more likely you will promote more of it. If there's no reason to believe you will be held accountable or arrested while looting, that's not going to, there's no deterrent to it. So there's we're a long way away from the Monday morning quarterbacking and to the after action reports on this, but there will be a lot of criticism on all sides as to how law enforcement has responded. They are in a no-win situation here, but it appears that certainly in Los Angeles and Santa Monica and elsewhere, they're operating with deference to the protesters.
Conan, are you still with us? What are the other pictures? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the last thing they want is for there to be a loss of life amongst the civilian population, particularly amongst those who are demonstrating and with their constitutional authority. But at the same time, they potentially put their own officers at risk. So it's going to be very dicey over the next hours. They're trying to get some sense of control before the sun drops, because the most violence takes place at nightfall. We're seeing an idea as what we can expect in the next few hours, I'm afraid.
And that's exactly what we saw last night. But one of the pictures that really resonates with people, and they don't understand why, when you see the looters moving into a store and removing everything, and you see a police line or a group of officers maybe less than a block away and nothing is done.
Right, and that's the difference from what you had back in 1965, where there actually was an order shoot to kill when it came to looting, and of course during the Rodney King riots. These are departments that are responding in Santa Monica and Los Angeles. These are not city councils that are very conservative, strong law and order. They're very much go out of their way to anticipate as well as to promote the idea of civil discourse and demonstrations and their constitutional right to peaceful assembly. But at the same time, they have this effort, they have this problem with not just a few. There are quite a few folks taking place in the looting that we're seeing in various places, again, because some have rationalized it as part of the protest. It's not just about a crime of opportunity, but this is a way to inflict damage to a society and to a business community that they see as part of the oppressor. And so it's going to be a very difficult night. I'm not exactly sure where they're going to send the National Guard next, but that too, the sheriff has said they're not doing police work or arresting authority. They're there to protect. We'll see if that attitude changes over the next several hours.
We're continuing to see the looting there in Long Beach, contrasted by a fire department, the fire engine showing up to put out that sheriff's vehicle fire there in Santa Monica. Conan, we obviously, the biggest difference, and you mentioned it several times today, between 65 and 92, and what we're seeing here is that what police are dealing with here is because of something, at least immediately, that happened 2,000 miles away.
Right, and that goes to the change of society from 92 and 65. Everybody didn't have a camera. We've seen videotape of misdeeds by law enforcement officers. Some social critics will say that has amplified something that is actually where progress is being made. We had the Congresswoman Karen Bass on a few hours ago, and she was talking about comments made by a mayor in Mississippi who was defending the actions of the police officers in Minneapolis. Well, you could make the argument that the fact she has to cite a mayor in Mississippi and not a mayor in California, not a mayor in New York, not a mayor in Pennsylvania, gives you an idea that actually progress has been made, because in an earlier time, there would have been mayors elsewhere who would have defended the way George Floyd was treated. So I just have to say that it's vastly different, and it has to be frustrating for these departments to believe they have done as much as they can. Certainly there's more to be done, but there has been a good faith effort in order for them, for example, the LAPD, to have a law enforcement agency that represents the racial makeup of the city. And for this to happen nonetheless because of the actions of officers in a distant city that obviously has not gone through what LA has gone through.
And vastly different, Conan, in that this week we saw all the police chiefs come out and really break ranks and speak out against what happened in Minneapolis. Think back even 5 or 10 years ago, that never would have happened.
True, and we also should say that police unions who have been criticized by many civil rights groups for going out of their way to defend bad cops, well, the Los Angeles Police Protective League came out with a very strong statement against what happened in Minneapolis. In talking to use of force experts, of course, here, the kind of position that George Floyd was placed in is not taught here at academies. It is not part of policy. That anything that was done there would be completely out of policy, and they have a different attitude towards the kind of officers that have the disciplinary issues that the particular officer in the Minneapolis case had. So again, it's part of the culture of policing, But what we're seeing, I think, is that in retrospect to this entire endeavor, is that it has to be a complete and utter national effort, because whereas you can make progress with your municipality, with your city council, with your police chief, you can bring in civil rights leaders to help them with terms of training and leadership. It doesn't matter if a department many miles away, all the way on the other side of the country, doesn't follow that kind of protocol, and you end up with an astounding situation that we saw here out of Minneapolis, and videotape that has gone worldwide and shocked the conscience of a nation and resulted in violence in the street of a city so far away.
Conan, I hate to put you on the spot here, but you've been in the market for a long time in Los Angeles. You grew up in California. You remember what the LAPD was like before the Christopher Commission, before Warren Christopher came in and investigated. Can you almost compare and contrast that to what we see now?
Well, you know what? I'll talk a little bit about architecture here, Colleen, because if anybody has seen the police department on 1st and Spring today that was built by Bill Bratton and compared it to the Los Angeles Police Department, the Parker Center, that is embodiment of what they believe is the new LAPD. Parker Center was a fortress. The new LAPD headquarters is 10 floors of windows to represent transparency. It is open to, with a garden you have to walk through to get there. The badges of the dead officers don't face inside as if these are warriors, fallen warriors from our community. They face outside to the public. And that's emblematic of what the police department in Los Angeles says they have changed in terms of culture. To your point, prior to this, it was viewed as an occupational force in South Los Angeles. There was a warrior class. Of course, they operated out of police units. There was nothing like community-based policing. And since then, we've had several African-American police chiefs. We've had a complete turnaround. William Bratton has credited it, frankly. And this is all dependent on community-based policing, recruiting the right kind of people and changing the culture. They believe they have made very good progress in that. And if you listen to people like Connie Rice, a civil rights leader, activist, who has sued the LAPD repeatedly, she's been brought in and asked about training. She's been brought in and asked, who should we have as chief? And other groups, the Urban Policy, Urban Peace Institute we talked to the other day, they attest to the same thing. Is it perfect? No. It'll never be perfect, but there's got to be frustration from this mayor and this police department that they have done the progress that's been needed, not to mention 10 years of a consent decree from the Department of Justice overseeing their actions, and still we're right back at the kind of civil unrest that we had under when it was a much different LAPD and a much different leadership.
Conan, thank you for your perspective. As always, we want to get back right now to our side-by-side view of our two news choppers. We're lucky to have two choppers giving us two perspectives. What we're seeing in Long Beach appears to be a peaceful standoff with police, a protest that's happening there. And on the right side, we want to get to Gil Levis, a news chopper for Bravo, over this what appears to be a barber shop. Are there people who had stopped looters from coming in or forced them out, Gil?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry for the exhaust shot. We're going to try to clean that up right now. But this is Lincoln Boulevard and Broadway. A group of people standing guard, it looks like, at the Cuts Barber Shop here. About 6 or 7 people that were standing guard as people were running by, going to other stores to loot those stores. But we witnessed a car come over and throw items, a person out the window throwing items at these people here. We're going to try to slide to the forward, Jim, and we'll get a better shot of this. But again, this group here being assaulted at one point from someone in a car throwing items at them. They're trying to protect this barbershop, keep looters out from going in. It looked like someone had already broken into the shop. The windows, the front doors are broken out, and these group of about 7 or 8 people maybe standing guard as other people running by and trying to get in.
And Gil, talk about that. I mean, we would obviously never recommend it, but we have seen several times now today people in Santa Monica trying to stand guard, trying to stop people from doing and committing these crimes.
Yeah, you know, We have seen that, and it is a very dangerous situation. We saw the guy on the bicycle getting beat because he pulled off the covering on the license plate, but here's a group of people, maybe they're the workers, maybe friends of the shop here, but again, it's a hair salon that likely was given the green light to open just a couple of days ago, and here they are losing their livelihood with the looters trying to get in there. Obviously damage to the property right there, and they're doing what they can to protect in a bit of a small group, but there's power in numbers, I guess, and so far they've been able to fend off anybody trying to get into their shop.
And sadly, sometimes when the looters show up and they are confronted with this, all they do is move on to another place that is not protected. Where's the closest group to this area in terms of looters?
Yeah, let me come out because I watched several people run around the corner here onto Broadway, and they turned up Broadway eastbound on Broadway. I'm not sure how far they made it out that direction, but you're seeing some of the group here that ran by a short time. You see the LAPD airship cutting through our picture, and it looked like, you know, Broadway was one of the targets here earlier throughout the day, and just not too long ago we witnessed a bunch of people looting some stores, a pharmacy up the street at 9th Street. So again, different groups out here. It's unclear. A lot of them are the protesters that have been protesting peacefully, and then you have the looters that were going after the shops like this barbershop here at Lincoln Boulevard and Broadway.
As you mentioned, Gil, this poor barbershop thinking they would probably reopen this weekend only to deal with this and deal with the damage, now having to deal with that, already dealing with a financial strain, I'm sure, of not being able to open over the last several months. We have the other shot here on your left side of your screen. This is in Long Beach. Eliana Moreno is overhead in News Chopper 4 Alpha. Eliana, if you can hear us, what are we seeing here? It appears to be peaceful so far.
And Jonathan, we're also off of Broadway, just like Gil, but this time in Long Beach. Broadway with a cross of Pine Avenue. This particular group of protesters is doing just that. They are protesting. They are completely different from the looters that we are seeing still at the Pike outlets, not too far, just to the south. But this group, as you can see, is surrounded by officers. You see the officers there in their skirmish line, but most of the protesters either sitting down or just waving their signs, trying to have their voices heard, which is the reason that they're out here today. Let me widen out the shot, though. I want to show you all of the police activity here through the area. And when I do that too, I'm going to move the shot over to the south. I want to show you where some of that looting is still taking place. Again, those are the Pike outlets just off of Shoreline Drive. We have seen people continue to come in and out of these outlets. We're right overhead right now. I'll ask my pilot, Sarah, if he could just scoot back just a touch. But I'm going to zoom in here on one of the areas that we have seen most of the activity, which is the Hot Topic store here. Again, this is at the outlet mall right off of Shoreline Drive. There are officers nearby, but they're just not in this portion of the outlet mall. And monitoring the scanner and everything that Long Beach police is talking about, they're getting multiple calls about looting at pharmacies nearby, at pawn shops, and then of course the looting that is taking place here. But one of the interesting things that I heard one of the officers say to the dispatcher is, we know about all the looting that is going on, but we cannot separate. We must stick together. So they're not letting their officers break up into little groups to go check out the looting. They're trying to stick together because, again, there's strength in numbers and it will keep those officers protected. But you can see people still coming out here, hands full, and looks like they're even sharing with each other. If they can't carry it, they say, hey, why don't you carry this for me because my hands are full, and then they move on to the next store.
Ileana, how close is that large group to this?
This is maybe about a mile away. So the large group, and I'm pretty sure I can get it here in one shot for you. The other group is just off of Broadway and Pine, and then this looting is taking place just to the south off of Shoreline and Pine. So it's maybe about a mile around that distance. A lot of these protesters were actually closer to the outlet mall not long ago, but they made their way up to the north. They really don't want to be associated with all of the looting that is going just onto the south.
It's interesting, we're 30 minutes into the curfew in Long Beach and 2.5 hours into the one in Santa Monica. And yet, every shot we take, you see a lot of people, whether they're protesters or looters, and we see a lot of cars as well.
Yeah, this is still a very busy area. One of the numbers that I heard for the number of protesters that was out here earlier was about 1,000. I don't think we have 1,000 people out here now, but as you said, Colleen, streets here through the area still very busy. We still have a lot of vehicle traffic. We still have foot traffic from the pedestrians. And of course, look at this. This is one of the majors here through the area. This is going to be Shoreline Drive. We're very close to some of the major landmarks here in Long Beach, including the Long Beach Aquarium, as well as the Queen Mary. So that's basically the area that we are at right now. Under normal circumstances, it is a busy area, especially when we're not under quarantine. But today, all of these vehicles should have cleared out. All of these people definitely should not be looting. And we do still, though, have that peaceful protest going on just to the north.
Eliana, we're going to stay with your shot here as we bring in Reverend Najuma Smith-Pollard with the USC Center for Religion and Civic Culture. Najuma, are you with us right now?
I am. Thank you so very much. Glad to be on with you all this afternoon.
Yeah, no, thank you for joining us and taking the time to speak with us as we continue to see, two contrasting images. We're seeing very peaceful protests despite being deemed unlawful now because of the curfew that's been put in place. But then, Najuma, we see people stealing and looting, and it seems to be taking away from the message of what the protesters are trying to accomplish.
Right, and I think what's important for those that are watching the news to understand is that we want to focus on the message of those who are peacefully protesting, who have the right and who should be protesting injustice, who should be protesting for systemic and institutional change. The difficulty, the challenge, the heartbreak is that their strong messaging, the important messaging, the broader messaging is getting lost in dialogue and conversation around stores. And again, we understand that people are angry, tempers are hot, but we want to focus on, and I appreciate you all for showing the peaceful protest, because one of the things that we're asking of our allies and the media is let's keep the attention on the message. The message is we want systemic and institutional change. We want to speak truth to power. We don't want injustice. And so, again, it's constantly pushing that message. And I was asked that question earlier about can the message of the true not the true, but the message of the real protest can recover? Absolutely, because people who have set their heart and who have intended to fight for justice will always fight for justice. And it's important that we who have voice continue to press that message that we're here protesting, that we're here standing, we're here speaking. I haven't been out to protest because my voice is, I work from a different place, a different lane. But nevertheless, it is about the message of injustice cannot continue to thrive. Systemic and institutional racism cannot continue to thrive, and we've got to stand against that. We've got to speak against that in power, but with responsibility. And so we push that message, the peaceful protest, and we want to encourage people to focus on the peaceful protest. At the same time, we want to discourage the destruction of property, the destruction of businesses.
Reverend, do you understand how difficult it is to focus on that message when the pictures we are seeing, for the most part, are looters? I mean, we've covered the protests during the day. We have a split screen here in Santa Monica. You see the protesters on one side who are exercising their right for civil disobedience. They are out after walk out with a safe there. How does the message not get lost with all this violence? How do you keep people on track?
Right, by doing what you and I are doing right now, having the dialogue, having the conversation, and reminding the public, reminding those who are viewing that people who are fighting for justice, people who are fighting for change, are not the same people that are destroying buildings and property. And I can't speak for every individual out there, but I know the people that I stand with and the people that are fighting for justice are not destroying property. They're not tagging buildings. They're not, dismantling a person's business. They are truly standing for justice and truly standing for a change, and they're not doing it that way. And again, I can't speak for those that are doing the looting and those that are destroying, but I can say this, that we want to keep our focus and attention and keep shouting the broader message. And what has to happen with those that are looting, that has That is unfortunate. That is not what we want. That's not what we want to see. We want to see systemic change. We don't want the message to be lost in the conversation around the looting.
Are you surprised that some of the, according to the sheriff today, Sheriff Villanueva, that some of the people they have arrested are from out of state?
I'm not surprised at all. These things happen. And there's speculation about who the looters are. There's speculation that some of them are different groups, that they are people from out of town. There are people that actually have no interest in the real movement. There's speculation of that. Again, I don't know those people. I don't know specifically, but there's speculation. And am I surprised? No, because history has shown that that has happened time and time again, where people are out doing their righteous protest, and then others come in who want to take advantage of, who want to take opportunity to do unlawful acts.
Are there any efforts?
That's not a surprise, but it is something that we cannot continue to. We don't want to condone.
Najuma, we had heard today that there were several groups that were organizing a lot of the looting in the Santa Monica area. We heard how organized, unfortunately, it was when the looters got on the ground. They had 3 minutes to go in, and they would count down, and they would get back in the car, and they would take off. Is there any effort to reach out to or figure out who these groups may be, because they really are figuratively and literally stealing the message of what needs to be done in terms of police brutality and some of the violence that we've seen in our country over the last week?
What I know faith leaders are doing, because I work with a lot of faith leaders here in Los Angeles, is that we are organizing to be present at some of the other protests that are going to be happening. That I know people that are organizing all over the city to be present, to help kind of shift the energy. And so that's what we have to do. That's part of our work, is to be present, is to continue to stand with those, who have the righteous message, those who want to see systemic change. And for those who are doing the unlawful acts, that is not what we desire. Does not push the message, and the message of the real protest gets lost. And so we do not encourage that. People who are really fighting for justice are not encouraging that.
Reverend, we've seen this go on since Wednesday. Wednesday evening we saw with the 101, Thursday, Friday night downtown LA, last night, today. How long do you believe these protests will continue? As we're looking at Santa Monica here, we see someone in custody being arrested here. How long do you suspect these protests will continue?
That answer, I do not have an answer for that one. I don't, when we
But you mentioned faith-based leaders were going to have some sort of organized protest. Do you know if there's one scheduled for tomorrow?
Faith leaders, tomorrow, not at this point. I know there are some things happening on Tuesday, and later this week, but I don't know of anything tomorrow. And what I'm saying is that faith leaders are organizing to put ourselves present, to be present, to help shift the message and keep the message focused on dismantling systemic issues, institutional issues. That's the message. That's what we're focused on. That's what we're going to keep pushing. And we do not condone the looting and the destruction of property, because it takes away from the message of the real protest. And I can't tell you how long looters are going to be looting. That's not something that I can do, because we're not in communication with looters. We're not in communication with people that are destroying property or people that are coming from out of town. And so
we're starting to see more arrests now, Colleen, in the Santa Monica area there on the right side of your screen, and it sounds like police are kind of circled in on a group of people who are in this area. It's unclear if these people were looting. It's unclear if these people were simply protesting. We will try to find out more. But Najuma, as we have you on, Reverend, I mean, how do we?
And our role as prophetic people is to continue to pray for change and to continue to pray for safety, because we also don't want to see anybody get hurt. We don't want to see anybody. Nobody get hurt. Nobody. We don't want anybody to get hurt. So we continue to pray. We continue to speak the message, the core message, and not get lost and not get caught up and not take on, that other business, because that's not the business of people who have an interest in seeing real change in this country.
What do you believe? Sorry, Reverend. What do you believe needs to change so that we're not back here in 5 years again, or 10 years, or 20 years?
And that's a great question, because the movement is about police brutality. It's rooted in what happened to George Floyd. He was murdered. And so the issue is police brutality. So what we continue to push for is systematic change within our system, within our criminal justice system, within law enforcement. And let's be very clear, there are a number of law enforcement officers who are doing they're doing a great job, but we have to still continue to press for change within when we have issues of police brutality. That is a real issue, and we have to continue to push for that. And so again, like I said before, it can't just attack the protest and not deal with the cancer or the virus, the bacteria. Racism is an issue, and we have to continue to speak truth to power that. And I know that that is the interest of people who are really protesting for the right reasons, not for individuals who are out there looting and tearing up businesses and tearing up, people's property. That is not what people who are